Nope, now you're ready.
I'm ready. Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our February Faculty Council meeting. Before I go into the heart of my remarks, I wanted to let you know just a few things. First, the Office of Faculty Governance is extending the nomination period for honorary degrees to be awarded in May of 2023. The deadline will close on February 21st, which is 1 week from Monday. The submission portal is found under the awards tab on the Office of Faculty Governance website. Your nominations are critical to the process, so please consider nominating individuals in your discipline or in your sphere that you believe are deserving of such an honor. I also want to thank everyone who put their names in to be considered for standing for election for various committees within faculty governance. The nominating committee, which is led by our secretary of the faculty, Jill Moore, is hard at work. And I want to acknowledge that this is a particularly heavy lift for our Office of Faculty Governance staff team. They do an awful lot of work on this and coordinating it. And so I wanted to thank them for all of that work. If you receive a call asking you to stand for election, I hope that you will consider saying yes. And actually, I just hope that you'll say yes, not consider it. Our voice is only as strong as the people who choose to come to the table. And so if you love this place and what it stands for, or even if you feel like it could use some improvement, please stand for election. It's work that makes a difference, and particularly when your voice is included. So Valentine's Day is upon us, and perhaps some of us are thinking about people and places we hold dear. A friend wrote to me this week with a reflection on why UNC Chapel Hill was a place that he held dear. He combined his thoughts with those of the author Marilynne Robinson to beautiful effect, and I asked him if I could share these comments with you. And he writes, "My love for Carolina is in the same category as my love for America, a set of impossibly idealistic aspirations, rarely achieved, but always worth striving for. It's an absolute miracle that a deeply impoverished Southern state built this place, sustained it for over 2 centuries, and continues to support it to this day. It's miraculous that any society has managed to build and celebrate institutions that are purpose-built to question orthodoxy and encourage free thinking." Marilynne Robinson continues, the author, and she wrote, "There is a vast educational culture in this country, unlike anything else in the world. It emerged from a glorious sense of the possible." And then back to my friend's comments, he writes, "That's what I feel when I walk across the campus at Carolina, a glorious sense of the possible." And back to Robinson, "Public universities are a tribute and an invitation to the young who can and should make the new world out of the unmapped and unbounded resource of their minds." I didn't think I could say anything more eloquent than that. And so I'll share that with you on this Valentine's Day. And at this point, turn it over to our Chancellor.
Thank you, Mimi. I love your words there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's great to be with everyone this afternoon. We are, hard to believe, but we're at the end of week 5 of the semester, and I'm grateful for all that our community has done in responding to the Omicron variant. As I've walked campus and attended events over these past several weeks, the energy and enthusiasm for what we are accomplishing together is appreciated by so many people. And it's often the case that they come up and tell you about it and thank you. And I'm sure that many of you are experiencing this as well. Our positivity rate continues to decline. The case counts have sort of leveled off. The positivity rate was 19% for symptomatic individuals this past week compared to 36% the week before. And we're up about the course of the virus at this point. And I know Ron Strauss is going to be with us a little later to talk more about this. I want to share a few quick updates and save some time for questions at the end. But since I joined you last, Chris Clemens, as you know, has officially started as our new Provost and Chief Academic Officer. He's hit the ground running. And I want to thank you for welcoming him to his first faculty council meeting today as our provost. And I know he's going to talk about some of the transitions that he's working on in the provost's office, and really eager to meet with many of our faculty and to move some of our initiatives forward. We'll also soon welcome a new student body president, current junior Talaja Van, won Tuesday's student president election. You probably read about that. And I've worked with Talaja in her role as president of the Black Student Movement. And I'm looking forward to working alongside her to support our students over the next year. We also announced yesterday that Frank Bruni will serve as our commencement speaker for the class of 2022. Frank Bruni is a distinguished Carolina alumnus and one of my personal favorite writers. If you missed his excellent talk at the Thomas Wolfe lecture in the fall, I encourage you to watch the recording of it. It was a lot of fun. We were over at the Student Union in the auditorium, and I had a chance to interview him. And Frank's a great friend. He's a member of my think tank group, both when I was dean of the college and also as chancellor. And I know he's going to do a great job. The pandemic prevented him from serving as our speaker in 2020. And I'm glad that he'll finally be able to address our graduates as we had envisioned 2 years ago. There are two other announcements from this week that I wanted to bring to your attention. I mentioned both of them in my campus message earlier today. We launched the Hills Care Network website, care.unc.edu, and I hope you have a chance to check it out. This will serve as a central hub for mental health resources for anyone in our community looking for support. Amy Johnson will share more in her update later in our meeting, and I'm grateful to her team and everyone who worked to put this together so quickly after our mental health summit back in mid-November, and so more to come on that. The other update that I know many of you will enjoy is that the graduate school announced this week that Carolina ranked highly in the National Science Foundation's annual survey of earned doctorates for the period of 2016 to 2020. We ranked among the top 4 universities in doctorates awarded to Black or African American doctoral recipients at public institutions. And for American Indian and Alaskan Natives, Carolina ranked 17th overall. For students who identify as more than one race, we ranked 15th overall. And the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill is number 19 among public institutions for doctoral degrees to all students, and number 24 overall whenever you factor in both privates and publics. So I think this is a testament to the work done by the graduate school here at Carolina, by Dean Suzanne Barbour and her leadership, but also to our world-class faculty that mentor these incredible graduate students that really help to keep our research enterprise thriving, and helps to promote the retention and successful graduation of our graduate students from all backgrounds. And I think this is we should feel really good about the climate of inclusion that we aspire toward as we recruit and retain our graduate students. I want to briefly talk about the employees' raises in the recent state budget. We finally have an annual raise process to work through. The General Assembly, as you know, provided for an annual raise process as part of the most recent budget, which provided for 3 parts to that. The mandatory COVID bonus, which was paid out in December, the mandatory 2.5% base adjustment, which was paid out in January, together with a retroactive lump sum payment that covered the period of June through December. And so this is really important, as we know we've had several years without raises or significant raises for sure. And so a discretionary top up that the UNC system schools can choose to implement if they have the funds to support it was also a part of what has been allowed with these with this annual raise process. So because of the hard work that units have done over the course of the past several years, especially over this past year to 18 months to address the budget deficit, we've been able to not just balance the budget, but to create a small pool from which we might find some of our might fund some of our highest priority projects. But we've also been working through unit budget requests over the course of the past several months. And without fail, the highest priority among units is further investment in our people, our faculty, our staff, and graduate students. And so we're working through the process now, but I do expect that between the 2.5% base adjustment and the discretionary increases that we're allowed to put forward, that we'll have distributed a significant amount into our workforce by the end of March. About 16.5 million of that was provided by the state, and we're grateful for the General Assembly's investment in our campus. As with previous annual raise processes, there are rules about how these increases can be awarded. Most importantly, employees, including faculty, must be in good standing, and adjustments are not permitted to be made across the board. So I'm happy with the way our deans have been working on this. So as I've said before, we're going to prioritize such that we can address top performers and place emphasis on addressing equity and compression issues that exist in many of the units across campus. Deans and vice chancellors have submitted their requests, and those are being reviewed for approval now. And those discretionary adjustments will be paid in March to those who are receiving them. And so more to come on that. But I just thought it was important to say that I'm pleased that because of the hard work to help balance our budget, that we, as I mentioned at the beginning of that process, we would hope to be able to have funds for reinvestment to really take care of our people, take care of those programs and other initiatives that are allowing us to move forward as the leading global public research university that we aspire to be. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions now or later. I know that Chris Clemens is going to join us for comments as well, and we could take questions together at the end. Mimi, I'll turn it back to you. Decide how you'd like to do that.
Right. Well, looking at the time and how we allocated it, I think we could go ahead. If there are specific questions for the Chancellor, let's go ahead and take some questions for the Chancellor. Or seeing none, we can go on to our next agenda item.
Mimi, I had a quick question, but I didn't want to take up too much time with it. I sent you a note in the chat.
Oh, please go right ahead.
Is that all right?
Yep.
So this is a bit off topic, but a number of students have been asking me about the university's policy about communicating about student deaths. And I know that's a very delicate issue. And I just wondered if Chancellor Guskowitz, if you had any just sort of general things that we can say as faculty to students who have concerns about these issues, just sort of talking points or things that we can say to explain why we can't always make university-wide announcements about those issues.
I would also say that's probably Amy
oh,
Johnson.
Okay, I apologize.
That's okay. So I know Amy is on the agenda later.
Okay, I can wait then. That's totally fine.
But I think it's a really good question, and I know that Vice Chancellor Johnson can address this. And we've had many conversations around this, and we're following best practices around how information is communicated. And we've had a challenging year as that we've talked about putting in place, and part of what Amy will be discussing later. But we also have to respect the wishes of the family in situations. I will say that those students who are most affected, either living in a suite or the same floor or residential hall or off-campus home. Certainly are, the communication is different there as opposed to a widespread.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Amy, do you want to jump in because the Chancellor's audio is breaking up a little bit? So
Yes, I'm happy to speak to this issue. Am I coming through okay? Yes, so first of all, I would just preface by saying we acknowledge that every death among our community is a tragedy, and we take these very seriously and are constantly sort of checking in with best practices, as the Chancellor has indicated, and consulting with colleagues. I just actually came from a senior student affairs officer meeting where we met with the SEC and several invited universities, and we had about 25 or 30 or so. And I will say all but one are doing what we are doing in terms of a communication of student death practice. So first of all, I'll say, as you may understand, and as the Chancellor acknowledged, one of the things that we do is work very closely with the family, because we typically do not share. We do not share unless there is a risk and an immediate threat to the campus community in a broad-based public way, an announcement of student death. And part of the reason for that is, as you may imagine, we're working with a family who often has their own desires and wishes regarding how any such information regarding their family member is shared. It can potentially compromise their privacy, and that's something that they obviously feel very strongly about. But the other piece is that, particularly at a large place like Carolina, with 30,000 students and an equally significant population of faculty and staff, the release of that information in a broad-based way, in an email or reading it in a newspaper, can actually be very jarring and triggering, and it often causes more harm than good. And so we try to be very judicious and careful about the release of that information. What we do, I think, as the Chancellor has acknowledged, is immediately reach out to the close communities of that student. So residence halls, certainly the faculty and the academic departments with which that student is associated, clubs and organizations, not only to share the news of the student's death, but also to make sure that, most importantly, we are extending support resources. And then we work through the various networks to try to also provide that information in a way that it is hopefully backstopped with resource and support, rather than send out a campus-wide email. So I hope that's helpful, and we're certainly glad to talk about that more as is useful for folks. And please know that this is an area in which we're constantly sort of assessing and evaluating in context with all of those sort of factors that I just mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, other questions for the Chancellor. One thing that's coming up in a direct message to me is, I think everyone is reading about the lawsuit that is, heading to the Supreme Court. At what point, this would not be for you, Amy, I don't think, but for the Chancellor, at what point will we learn more about that? Or is that something that it's not possible to have any kind of public briefing on, or what should we expect?
Can you hear me okay, Mimi?
Yes, that's better.
Well, the case will likely not be heard until early part of the fall semester, and probably any decisions or outcomes from that won't be known until probably this time to maybe summer of 23. So we're still a long ways off. We've got an incredible team that's working hard on this. And as we've said before, we'll continue to defend our admissions practice, our holistic admissions practice. We believe strongly that it meets the current Supreme Court precedent. And we prevailed, as you know, in the trial court that took place over in Winston-Salem back many months ago. So we will, though, provide updates as they become available, but I don't expect much, probably until maybe mid to late summer, as we're preparing the case for the Supreme Court hearing.
Thank you. Let's see. Audrey is bringing something up in the chat. Audrey, do you want to pose your question?
Sure. Just to say that just because we're in the middle of admissions, I know this came up from some of our faculty in our department wanting to say something publicly, given, I guess, Harvard put out a public statement about the case. And, we sort of were told that not to do that by leadership within our school, but there was some intimation that maybe there would be some clarification coming soon about sort of what we can and can't say as departments, or anyway, I just wasn't sure if there was any reminders, or I understand there was information that came out when this started, but I think just because we're in the middle of admissions, there are questions circulating, I know, around if questions are asked, what can or can't be said. And I see somebody posted something to me, so I appreciate there. Okay, thanks.
The process will not change throughout this process. And that's something that we've made very clear. We believe in our current holistic admissions process. And so until we would be told otherwise that the Supreme Court would rule against us, we'll stay the course with that process. And that's what we're messaging, maybe not clearly enough, but we'll work on that. And we'll talk with our communications team and legal team about how we might try to amplify that messaging, make it more clear. Thanks, Audrey.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Chancellor? All right, let's go ahead and move then to Provost Clements. Welcome, Provost Clements, to your first official faculty council meeting as Provost. We're happy to have you with us.
Thank you, Mimi. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm honored to be here as our university's provost. More than that, I'm humbled to be in front of you, my colleagues. But this is not about me, it's about us. What we do here together matters. This body represents much more than what is reflected in any session's agenda or discussed on any specific issue. You represent the august faculty of the first, and I think the best public university in the United States of America. We still believe in the founding ideas of our university, and I stand in solidarity with those of you who say we are still proudly the university of the people. Here's what I'd like you to know. We're excited about the work we've begun to undertake in the Provost's office. Our goal is simple. We want to recenter the Provost's office around the role of chief academic.
Not enough for the people we said that are.
Sorry?
Excuse me, if somebody is not muted, please mute.
Thought there was a question already. We want to recenter the Provost's office around the dual roles of chief academic officer for the university and advocate in chief for our university's academic community, for our faculty, our staff, and our students. To represent that we are focused on these roles, we've dropped the title Executive Vice Chancellor from our masthead. Now, for legal and bureaucratic reasons, I retain that title, so the change is largely symbolic, but symbols matter. And in this case, it symbolizes our commitment and my commitment to put our students, staff, and faculty first. We're building a team in support of that mission. Executive Vice Provost Amy Locklear-Hertel has been inspirational in this process, bringing great ideas, enthusiasm, and just plain old hard work to her role as we return the office to its foundational principles. To help restructure our work and to better serve and advocate for you, and to help you serve our students and our state, earlier this week, we announced a transition team that will meet through the end of June. It serves the function transition teams always do, to leverage institutional knowledge and ensure a smooth transition of the functions of the office. But we also see it as the beginning of a campus engagement strategy. They're an engagement team and a first step towards our efforts in broadening the conversation about the direction of our university. I've asked that they not only accept, but actively solicit input and ideas from the campus, and to help us implement the changes that we need to make to serve you better. I can already share with you some of what that work will look like because we already have input based on our email and other communications with the campus. The team will advise us on how to build better points of contact and modes of communication with all members of our campus community, faculty, staff, and students. This may mean, among other things, rethinking and expanding faculty, staff, and student representation on committees or in the decision-making process. The team will solicit input from the campus for how we can cultivate academic community and advance faculty in their careers. And on that point, one idea already advanced is a campus-level awards committee that will be more attentive and proactive in promoting the work of you, the faculty, and nominating you for national and international awards and academy memberships. We need to hear your voices, and we need to hear them in terms that reflect your perspectives. We can't promise that we'll always agree, but we're committed to not only hearing, but respecting and whenever possible, acting on what you have to say. I want to use the remainder of my time today to deliver two messages that animate the work we will do together. They are, to my mind, the substantive commitments behind my understanding of the office as Chief Academic Office and as Advocate-in-Chief. These are my two messages. One, this body represents an academy of scholars, and I trust you to define and determine the academic direction of our campus. The faculty code demands it, and you have the right to expect it. Number two, my team and I want to know and be able to tell your stories in ways that resonate with the people of North Carolina, from the humblest of the 100 counties to the governor and legislature in Raleigh. Our story is powerful. It needs to be told and told well. Our staff, administration, and faculty works tirelessly and without compromising our commitment to excellence during one of the most difficult periods on our campus and in our nation. I want you to know I admire you for this work. You have not only grappled with the pandemic, you have wrestled parts of it to the ground. I know that you were exhausted, but you have persevered in serving our students and our state. Across this great university, faculty and staff have been doing the practical and urgent work to build the tools, technologies, and knowledge we needed to mitigate the pandemic's worst effects. Aided by funds from the CARES Act, dispersed through the state legislature, through the Vice Chancellor for Research, and through the work of the NC Policy Collaboratory. In the School of Public Health, you built the tools to test the antivirals and vaccinations that are mitigating this global health crisis. In the School of Medicine, you developed monoclonal antibody therapies. In the college, you designed public service messages to encourage our hesitant citizens to get vaccinated. In the School of Education, you found ways to measure and mitigate the mental health effects of the pandemic on North Carolina students. In all of the schools, you worked together, finding new ways to measure and test, to assay wastewater, to identify variants, to measure disparities in impact, and you kept going. You did it all while putting our students first. You learned new ways to teach, whether online, hybrid, or in person, even when it put you at risk. You redeveloped classes and you redeveloped them again to make sure you were getting through to your students. You balanced disrupted family life, homeschooling of children, unavoidable obligations to your chair or dean, and worried about your own career progression as you took on the labor of a disrupted university, and you did all this with no idea of when it will end. Did our leaders, who are also members of this community of scholars, make errors and fumbles? Of course they did. We all did. What we do is incredibly hard in the best of times, and this has been far from the best of times. Yet I believe there is no community of scholars in the world that has done as much to address the pandemic as you, my colleagues, have done, not just as scholars, as teachers, mentors, communicators, healers, and leaders. We need to tell this story. We need to tell it better and wider until we all understand it. And then we need to keep telling it so that the state understands it and are proud of the investment they have made in you. That storytelling is the role of Advocate-in-Chief and will be a primary function for our office. We're going to listen to you, fight for you, and make your story heard because it deserves to be heard. And because the work of advancing knowledge in research and in teaching matters more than it ever has. The James Webb Space Telescope has just been launched into the heavens, carrying the name of our education school graduate who led NASA during the Apollo years. I'm going to ask you to indulge me while I tell you about one more thing we did during the pandemic in the realm of astrophysics. 5 billion or so years from now, according to the best estimates of our models, the sun will have exhausted its labor of consuming primordial hydrogen, and it will expand into a giant star. The human race will not likely be in bloom at that time, though some desiccated relic of our existence may remain pressed between the flinty pages of the Earth's sediment. The sun will then shed about half its mass and shrink to the size of the Earth, forming a white dwarf star. Jupiter, in its new orbit, will begin to scatter asteroids, comets, and other debris from the outer solar system, hurling some of it like Jovian thunderbolts directly toward the shrunken sun, whose tidal forces will crush these bodies to dust. The dust will be dragged toward the sun, and like the melted wings of Icarus, it will fall onto the white dwarf and change the spectrum of light being emitted in ways that reveal the presence and the constitution of these bodies that were crushed. For some older stars in the universe, this process has already happened, and we can measure the abundances of the elements that made up ancient exoplanets from UNC's SOAR telescope in Chile. During the pandemic, my graduate student team discovered the element lithium for the first time in exoplanetary debris falling onto a white dwarf star. Lithium is one of only 3 elements made in the primordial fireball of the Big Bang. Its history in the galaxy is hard to trace using stars because it's fragile and it's easily destroyed by stellar heat and pressure. This discovery, published in Science by my graduate students, opens the way to trace the galactic history of this element using a new method. Here's the thing. I cannot think of one practical use for this new knowledge. It is utterly gratuitous. It adds to the treasure of human knowledge, and perhaps it reminds us of what it is to be human, to let wonder and longing lead us in the ways of knowledge and in truth. But this I know, without the university, the discovery would not have happened. From the time of their invention, universities have been both the avenues and vehicles for the recognition of the grandest human aspirations. As we remember what we have lost in this pandemic, and for many of this, it means remembering members of our family who died of COVID-19, we must remember to be committed and thankful. Committed to the pursuit of and the transfer of knowledge, and thankful first to one another, to our colleagues on the faculty and staff, for continuing during the most difficult of times. We don't always agree with each other, and that we disagree does not in any way excuse us from our obligation of gratitude and admiration for one another. Though disputation is at the heart of our work, we are strongly united in our vision of and the mission of this university, and we're united in our desire to celebrate the diversity of people and the ways that they fulfill and advance our mission. And we ought to be thankful to our state, who pay tax and tuition, even when we experience want and are frustrated by limits. We need to engage them with the richness and the power of our story, of our pivotal role enshrined in our state constitution to educate the students of this state. And finally, for me at least, we ought to be thankful for the richness of the world into which we were born. Everyone imagines what it would be like to live in past times, but no scholar of past times could possibly imagine what it's like to be here now. Most of the accumulated work of the centuries is available to us by optical fiber at the click of a button. The tools and technologies for measuring and manipulating atoms, molecules, genomes, cells, circuits, qubits, light, and information have never been as sharp or as capable. Information and ideas have never been exchanged as fast or as freely as they are today. I believe the stage is set for the most interesting, fruitful, and productive era in the 1,000-year history of universities and in the 231-year history of UNC. One last thing. I have heard it said that we are no longer leading, but being led, that politics and partisanship have conspired to make it so that we cannot chart our own course, that we are too divided internally and too disconnected from our state to define our own direction. Well, I must not have gotten that memo. As your provost, your chief academic officer, and your advocate in chief, I'm going to promote sound shared governance. I'm going to tell our story and make the case for the state's investment in us and for confidence in our processes of governance. I'm going to explain what you already know, that we have incredible faculty. I believe that we are strong. We showed that during the pandemic, and with a little bit of work, we can be even stronger. I believe that we are united and that where we are divided, we can find common ground together. I believe that we are excellent and ready to serve the public, that we can demonstrate our commitment to our students and our state in advancing knowledge, and that we can do that best with governance that is reciprocal, responsible to our stakeholders, and crucially, committed to academic freedom and the values enshrined in the faculty code. I believe those things, and I know, we know, that we can demonstrate in principle and practice what grounds our common faith in our university and in one another. Committed to our founding principles, excellent in practice, and ready to tell our story to our state. That's our path forward together. Thank you for your time. I will take questions now.
Thank you very much, Provost Clemens. Really inspirational words. Thank you. I see there are some hands up. Jan, you want to start us off?
Provost Clemens, congratulations on being our provost. We are looking forward to your leadership. I had some questions about what things from the past you might be planning to continue. The things that come to my mind are like the plans for the School of Data Science or the revision of our internal budgeting model that has been much discussed here and never completed. So what are things that you are planning to continue going forward?
Thank you, Jan. I don't really believe in disruptive leadership at one level. And so many of those things are going to continue just as they have. We will make a School of Data Science. The planning for that has gone on for many, many years. There are requests for funding in front of people now, and you will be hearing a lot more in very short order about how that will go forward, but it will go forward. As far as budget model, what we need right now is transparency more than we need a rigid budget model that we will follow religiously. And so I'm working with Nate and Steve in the budget office so that I can understand and get my arms around the whole budget. When I know how to do that, I will be teaching the deans how to understand the whole budget. And then I will be willing to tell you or anyone else, but it is complex. I think it has come together only in the last 2 years in the all funds model in a way that's graspable by one or several minds. And so I'm doing that work. And I think I'm not going to promise that we will change the model. I'll promise that we will know enough to make good decisions around any model that we have.
Who's next? This is our chance. Barbara.
So, hi, Provost Clemens.
Hi,
Again,
Barbara.
let me add my congratulations. And yes, we are looking forward to working with you. I was curious to know more about what it means to drop the Executive Vice Chancellor title. I mean, you said you were dropping the title, but that you weren't really changing anything really about the role. Are there other changes on that you envision that are related to not leading with that kind of title in terms of your other? I mean, I know you have gazillions of direct reports and all kinds of responsibilities, and I'm just wondering what it means for the entirety of the job. If you wouldn't mind a little on that, that'd be great.
No, thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, I would not like to be Executive Vice Chancellor. I would like to be Provost. Now the job requires both, and there are legal reasons why if I have delegated authorities, I have to carry this longer title. The reason I'm not using it, so dropping it from practice, is I think the Provost is a member of the faculty who has special responsibility to the faculty. Amy Locklear Hertel in the last month has done a longitudinal study of the amount of faculty affairs support that our peers offer. And it's far greater than we have here. In fact, I defy you to search faculty affairs and find anything outside the med school that we call that. Now, we do have some of the functions, but they're not centralized. And I think they're not effective. When you look at our statistics and our comparisons to our peers, I believe our faculty are fully worthy to have as many National Academy and other Academy memberships and the same awards as other places. And yet our numbers are smaller. That's not because of a deficit in the quality of our faculty. We don't have the organizational attention to that nomination process. We do it, but we do it piecemeal and in places. And an example is when Kerry Bloom became chair of biology, I encouraged him to copy chemistry and make an awards committee. And then you saw with deliberate work in biology, 3 National Academy members in 1 year. They were there, they've been there for many years. We hadn't done the deliberate work. It's hard work, and it's work that needs to be done on behalf of our faculty. So Amy and I are looking at ways to enhance this office and the Center for Faculty Excellence, perhaps, in ways that pay attention to all the faculty, so that you don't wonder sometimes, has no one noticed my work? Do I turn in my PTRs and they're in a wastebasket somewhere? I mean, we read all of this and we see it, and yet we don't have easy ways to act, and everyone is busy. So let's carve out time and let's carve out people and space to get together and celebrate our faculty and figure out how to support their careers. And that's just one example. And we don't want to call it faculty affairs. We want to call it faculty advancement, because we needed to take care of faculty from the moment they arrive to make sure their mission is understood and aligned with ours. That if they're doing something new in ways that other faculty have not done, that they don't become afoul of our tenure policies when it becomes time for promotion and get disrespected for doing the thing we invited them here to do, because it was not the exact same scholarship as the people who came before. So this is a lot of intentional work. And so I think that's what I'm trying to say. That's what a provost office, not the provost by him or herself, but that's what a provost office should do for the faculty. And I really want us to focus on it, not to let go of other things that are important, but to let everyone know that's what we're doing.
Looks like there's some affirmation for that change, this idea of faculty advancement as opposed to faculty affairs in the chat.
Mimi, if I can jump in just for a second, one of the areas that you and I've talked a bit about in order to maintain our top 5 public ranking, that's one of the factors they look at, are the number of your faculty that are in their respective academies. So Chris and I have talked about this, and I'm really pleased that you're going to create this awards committee that will certainly put more world-class faculty forward for these well-deserved awards, and make sure that we're maintaining our prominence and in those areas, in those academies, and we'll keep our ranking where it needs to be, deserves to be.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Beth, you have your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Mimi, and congratulations, Provost Clemens. I was really pleased to see the email, the announcement of the transition team and the invitation soliciting input from faculty, staff, and students. In that announcement, you encouraged people to email members of the transition team, and I just wondered, are there other methods that the transition team will be using to solicit input from faculty, staff, and students that are maybe more proactive, and maybe also would, that some people may not feel comfortable emailing folks directly, and just would like to hear more about ways in which you plan to solicit that input and that feedback.
Thank you, Beth. I think the team will, but I've charged them to do something even better, which is to think about what you just said. What are the various ways we hear from faculty, staff, and students now? How do we make new permanent ways? This team is transitional and will disappear, but what I want to leave behind are entirely new ways for people to engage. And there's a lot of study on what's effective. Putting a suggestion box outside my door is one of the least effective ways. This has been tried and it really doesn't work. But what is effective? What I found in my experience at UNC Simple things. Sometimes a committee that could have a graduate student on it but doesn't, adds that graduate student. And a new mode for graduate students to tell things to faculty appears because they're sitting in a smaller group where trust is developed. And we found out some not too pretty things about our faculty in my department when we heard from grad students in an authentic way in a small setting like that. So that's an example, but I would like this team to be deliberate in building those possibilities. So they will be they'll be inviting in specific groups or representatives to speak in a proactive way. So it won't just be email or surveys, it'll be one-on-one communication, but that can only go on for so long as a transition. So what I'm asking them to do is how to make some of that permanent. Allow us in this office to hear in new ways that don't go away at the end of the transition period, but remain so that we can benefit from a really better access to knowledge about what people are thinking, needing, and wanting and hoping for on campus. So that's part of their charge.
And I would just sort of remind the group that the provost meets with the faculty executive committee every other time we meet. So at least monthly, there is an exchange between that elected body and the provost. So that provides a good conduit for information. Before we go to Ramey, there are a couple of comments in the chat. Professor Becker brings up the question of equity, or actually, and making sure that as we're nominating people, we have an attention to equity in that work. She gives some specific statistics there, and I think she chairs the Committee on the Status of Women, which will be coming out with a report and some recommendations, I believe, in our next faculty council meeting. And then,
and Mimi, is this chat captured so that we can see it later? Okay, thank you.
I can send it to you. Absolutely.
Perfect. Please do, and we will go through every chat suggestion and make sure that they're considered by the transition committee.
Okay. So the other question is, does UNC track faculty who are members of the national academies?
I think the Office of Institutional Research tries to keep up with many of these categories. And then we were subscribing, and maybe still will, to academic analytics, which is a tool that shows you how to compare those on all those metrics. And so there are services that tell you not just everything on your campus, but they let you see yourself in, next to your peers. And they even will suggest proactively, here's a faculty member whose CV looks like an academy member at UVA. You might consider putting them up for that same honor. And so there are tools that we can, we're starting a school of data science. We should use data to help us along in this. And there are already ways to do that. So
terrific. Ramey?
Thank you. And I add my congratulations as well, Provost Clement.
Thank you.
There is strong perception and some truths to the fact that the health side of campus operates and has some different needs from the other side of campus. How much has that been factored in, or will be factored in, as you move forward in this work as the chief advocate? Because there are those things that differ, and therefore treating everybody the same isn't treating everyone fairly.
Thank you, Ramey. That is absolutely true. And if you look at what we do now across many dimensions, we don't actually treat both parts of the campus the same. And we've always been careful in the provost's office to have good representation from health affairs. In fact, there used to be two provosts effectively. There was one for health affairs, one for the rest of the campus. So I'm very attentive to the fact that we need health affairs in our staff here and among the vice provost. So Amy Locklear-Hertel is from the School of Social Work, but I think we may need someone else. And so the transition team will be looking at the balance between those two things. And I'm actually already looking at the balance between those two things. And I'm asking, I know no one likes to make new administrators, but Ron was wearing a lot of hats here, and I'm wondering if I don't need someone else from health affairs in here. So happy to take advice on that, and my team will be looking at the numbers and advising. But thank you for raising it. I think the other thing I'm keenly aware of, Ramey, is I have lived in the college. You know, I go to the hospital, but I live in the college. And so I might not be as fully competent in areas of health affairs as someone who I could bring in from that part of the campus. So I know what I don't know there. I'm actually a little intimidated by how much there is to know. One way to deal with that is to get some help. So thank you for bringing it up.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, I'm looking to see if we have other questions, comments.
The one thing the chancellor's going to have to get me is an ice machine, or they have to fix this AC. I don't know how Bob lived in here. It's about 85 degrees when the sun hits this room, and I can't get the windows open, and they don't want me to break out of pain. So we're going to get that fixed, or I'll just be eating ice the whole time.
Could you remind us, I mean, the idea of a transition team is interesting. And I don't know that we've seen that a lot on our campus, or maybe it hasn't been clearly named as a transition team. There may have been people doing that work, but not necessarily thought of in that way. So I wondered if you might talk a minute about who the transition team is. I believe that was listed in your communication, but not everybody might remember. And what exactly you see each of those people as doing.
Yeah, I probably won't go through the whole list, but let me just say generally how I see that team and why we're doing it this way. I think there are always transition teams of some kind. And this group started out as looking internally. So it's all people who are, in administration and mostly in South Building. So it's not diverse in sense of representing all the constituencies on campus. It's really to look at the operations. So I felt coming in without a lot of history on the first floor. I was upstairs in South Building. I didn't know the culture. I didn't know what people were doing, whether it was an appropriate thing. And so the first set of tasks you won't see, they're internal. We're asking questions like, let's look at our org charts and see if everyone here understands their delegated authority and knows how to exercise it, and whether those are all appropriate. Are the decisions being made at the appropriate desk, and do people feel empowered to do that? And we're finding, in some of the new areas, Leah Cox, diversity on this campus is a very large set of functions. And she needs to get integrated with our team here in South Building. So we're already looking at structures that allow work that crosses every dimension to be better integrated and in contact with the various administrative offices. Because you can't leave diversity in a silo, right? That doesn't even make sense. And so we're making sure that there's interoperability and a little bit of porousness inside South Building. So that inward-looking stuff, I think, is often done quietly by a transition team that advises a new leader, and you may not hear about it. But since we have the team, we made sure that it had at least a broad set of perspectives on it. We wanted students represented, so Rachel is on there. We certainly wanted diversity, so Leah Cox is on there. We have Debbie Clark, who has been so invaluable in the pandemic and knows so many things about the operations that she was indispensable to the team. Amy Hertel is on it with me, and I'm on it kind of leading the team. We've added some communications support in the form of Chris Lumberg, because we think our communication strategy needs to be looked at by a professional, and we have professionals on the faculty like him. And so he's helping us. And so it's this kind of thinking of what are the functions that we want to accomplish, but it was not an attempt to bring in members of the campus on the team. We will be doing that as a team so that we can listen to graduate students, undergraduates, faculty forum, in individual meetings. It's a lot of work to do, but I think it'll make us a lot better when the new fiscal year starts. We'll probably have a different structure, different ways of reporting, and be emphasizing different things in the office.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for the provost at this time? Okay, I'm just going to check my little, sometimes I don't see everything. Okay. Kevin, was that you? Did you want to break in? You're just
I'm going to head now to the Moorhead Kane finalist weekend welcome. So I'm going to try to jump back into the end of the faculty council meeting, and I'm going to go welcome about 120 finalists that are visiting our campus virtually. So I hope to get back over to the meeting shortly.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go on to our next agenda item, which is a COVID update from Ron Strauss. Ron.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here, and I'll try and provide these updates over the spring. There are a lot of changes going on, and I think that you need to know about them. I'm going to focus on the changes, and one of the most important ones is to learn about our vaccination rates. And I'm really proud of where this campus is at the moment. Right now, about 94% of our students and 93% of our faculty are fully vaccinated. And I want you to compare that to the US population, which is 64% of people who could be vaccinated are vaccinated. North Carolina is 60%. Orange County, the most vaccinated county in North Carolina, is 75%. So there are differences. I'm really proud of the campus, but we've had a lot of COVID on this campus. Since the 1st of January, we've had 3,442 diagnosed cases of COVID. There may be more. Testing is not always perfect. Of those, almost 3,000 of them are students. However, things are changing. Just yesterday, there were 23 positive diagnoses, 19 students and 4 employees. That's a big change to the better. And I want to help you understand that change right now. So in the last 7 days, there were 129 student positives. The previous 7 days, 7 days earlier, 280 positives for students. And 2 weeks ago, 7 days, 663 positives. So we're definitely dropping in the positive rate if we're measuring it accurately, which I believe we are. It's interesting that of the people that are positive, over 80% of them are vaccinated, and the largest proportion, 82%, are undergraduate students. In terms of isolation, you see the mirror image of that circumstance. In the last 5 days, 29 students from residence halls are in isolation. The previous 5 days, 54 students. That's a 46% drop. Right at this moment, we've got 63 students on campus and off campus in isolation. So we're seeing changes. This is a vibrant moment for the epidemic. And it's definitely not the moment to declare any kind of victory. So the message for you is really, I would say, let's keep masking. Let's keep doing the things that have worked. Let's keep vaccinating people and providing boosters as needed. Let's watch the BA2 subvariant as it changes. Let's stay the course. Let's provide more treatment. Let's attend to having treatment for people who are immunocompromised or of advanced age. Let's be very careful with our students that have to miss class and be very filled with grace about their absences if it's COVID related, and help them. So I think the message is we've come a long ways, partly because of the change in the biology and the epidemiology of the epidemic. It's probably the wrong time to let it go. My own feeling about masking is any mask that covers you well and is comfortable will serve some purpose. I don't believe that N95s are the be all and the end all. They are very important for clinicians who are in direct contact with the people who are COVID positive, but for others, they are very uncomfortable and hard to wear for a long period of time. So people have asked about the use of N95s, and my feeling are really that the most important thing is that comfortable masks that you can wear are worn. And I would encourage you to keep doing that. You've returned to class in the last week or two. many of you face to face. So far, the reports from students are very positive. They feel excited to have their faculty members in class with them and are gratified by the chance to be back in face-to-face instruction, albeit with masks. So I thank you because as a faculty, you have really helped contribute to a positive direction for the campus. And that being said, please shoot any questions my way, either right now or whenever you get them, because I'm always happy to hear from the faculty. Try and answer things as clearly as I can, because I know the numbers are hard. Mark, you've got your hand up. But you're muted. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. So I understand your position is let's stay the course, and I see where you want to do that, at least for some foreseeable future. But given you mentioned that the COVID situation on campus is getting dramatically better quickly, we're seeing mask mandates being dropped across the country, including in schools. We know that there are significant learning, social, and mental health impacts from wearing masks. It's very difficult for me in the classroom to understand students, especially if they're sitting in the back and they've got a mask on. And if you choose to wear a mask, it does protect you. I guess my question is, when do we get to the point at which mask mandates in the classrooms end and mask wearing is an individual decision?
Great question, Mark, and I really appreciate you asking it. My own feeling about this, and it's more than just a feeling, is that until we know where the trajectory of the epidemic is, and in particular what the biology and future of the BA.2 subvariant looks like, it's too early to say drop the masks and let's just do it without masking. I understand the problem. I'm teaching a class of 155 students this semester. It's not easy. It's a challenge, but the alternative is also problematic. What we're learning, and we're very early in watching this subvariant, is it's more transmissible than the Omicron variant, and we don't know its degree of creating lifelong or long COVID kinds of outcomes. And so for us to prematurely make that decision, I think we could live with regret. So we're going to watch it. There are very few articles in the literature about it. I'm meeting twice a week with the infectious diseases specialists. They're on top of that literature. They contribute to the literature. And we're going to ask that question regularly. But I'm afraid that this is the moment where if we drop our caution, we could regret it. And I'm trying to figure out a way for us to just hold on and watch and see for a little while.
Well, do we have any criteria by which there will be an off-ramp? I know we've been saying just hold on for a couple of years now, but.
Well, I'm pretty new at this. And of course, I'm looking at things probably a little differently than my predecessor. And I'm going to have to think about that. I don't have an answer for you at this moment.
Okay,
you know,
thank
if it's really dropped, but you know, there were still 129 student positives in the last 7 days. And by the way, there are probably more than that we don't know about because people are using home test kits and we don't know the results of those. So there's some uncertainty. These are probably underestimates.
Yeah.
But as in the next few weeks, if we see this trend continue and we see that the BA.2 variant is not posing a problem in this community, then we can have, I think, a different kind of conversation. And I'm glad to have that.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I'll be back with you regularly. Jan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question about the Carolina Together testing. I hope I got the right name. It's the testing for asymptomatic people. Those numbers look pretty scary on some of these emails with 20% positive. And I wanted to ask, what's the plan for that service? Is it going to continue? Because it got significantly harder to actually access. Myself, every week, and it's got much harder.
That's interesting, Jan, because this week about half the slots went unfilled for testing. So we have reduced the capacity because the demand has been reduced. And there are probably a few reasons for that. One is some students and faculty or staff are using the home test kits that they got sent to them by the federal government or that are now available in Walgreens. And so they're going to another place. They can bill their health insurance for tests. And so there's an autonomous, independent way of getting a test. That wasn't true just a little while ago, as you know. We are reducing it so that there'll be one test site, and ultimately we're going to have a vendor in that does and has been doing COVID testing for all of Wake County and NC State University as well, to man the clinic in the student union. So it will continue. Demand is down. That could always change. We're not getting rid of the capacity. We're just adjusting to the volume. And if you're having trouble getting tests on campus, and I mean really getting them, not just getting them right next door, but finding them on campus or getting a slot, I would like to hear from you, because we're supposed to be able to dial it up and dial it down. And so right now, if there were half the slots being utilized, dialing it down is a reasonable thing to do. But we're not going to dial it to a level where it's hard for somebody to even get a test. At this moment in time, asymptomatic testing is less valuable and less meaningful than symptomatic testing. Symptomatic testing is really a tool for making treatment decisions and very important. So we're trying to emphasize that people who are symptomatic do get tested and do get referred, and really monitoring the availability of treatment. Because my prediction to you is that by the next time we meet, the next faculty council, we will see a marked growth in the availability of oral antiretroviral treatment for COVID. And it will change the face of how this looks. And when that happens, I think Mark and I can have a really good conversation about an off-ramp. But right now, we don't have that. And I happen to have read recently, just yesterday, about the BA2 variant's susceptibility to some of the treatments, mostly the monoclonal antibody, and it's not a pretty picture. It doesn't really work that well in that subvariant. So I think we're going to be working on treatment availability, monitoring referrals. There's really some good news for students. Young populations are mostly not ending up in hospitalization and not having deeply troubling symptoms. And that's very important for us to be aware of. Not true for older people. Our faculty, our staff have different vulnerabilities. We understand that.
I think I should clarify. I never have problems when I know I'll be on campus the next day because I don't go every day. But sometimes I ended on campus the day I didn't expect, and you cannot book the appointment for same day.
You have to
Only
book
allows
it.
for next day. So maybe you would have fewer unused spaces if you allow same day appointments too.
I think the same day appointments are through student health, but yeah, I'll take that up with our testing folks and see what they're doing with actually scheduling. That's a good question. Sorry. Any other questions?
I think there was a
Not-
comment from Audrey in the chat. Audrey, did you want to bring that to the larger group? I'm not sure that I can interpret it properly. So
Sure, no, I mean, I think it's just supporting what Ron was saying and just pointing out that just to remind people, everyone's really focused on the peak and we're past the peak, but just there can be as many cases on the downslope of the peak, if not more cases, if people start letting their guard down, right? And so you can still see as many cases on this part, even though it's exciting that maybe we're past the worst of it. And just also to remind people, we're still seeing, the same number of cases we were seeing back in December, when we had the last big peak. So there's still a lot of cases, and so I think as Ron said, we're still being really careful in our variant surveillance. Meeting with the state yesterday, we're watching BA2 really closely. We are seeing more cases, not a lot yet, But we are seeing more in the last week, and some of the state epi folks think we may see more. So we're watching that really carefully in our variant surveillance, and happy to share that with folks here.
Thank you, Audrey. I see another question from
Ricardo, I see,
Yes.
has a question. Hi, Ricardo.
Thank you. Hi, Ron. So good to see you. Ron, in my water cooler and peer conversations with people around the health sciences, I see that there's a significant vaccine hesitancy among non-faculty employees and staff members. Do you have any numbers or stats regarding the vaccination rate of our non-faculty employees or staff? And also if there's any breakdown on the rate of positivity among that cohort? Thank you, Ron.
So we do know that 88% of our non-faculty staff are fully vaccinated. That still means that potentially 12% are not. I do not have any breakdown about their ultimate COVID experience. It doesn't break in that way, and it's probably relatively a small number matter. But I do think that there is vaccine hesitancy. We know that. That's a national phenomenon. The variability across the state is remarkable. I did have a conversation with the planetarium this week. They were getting a group from Gates County, where of the people who were able to be vaccinated, the numbers, only 29% of the citizens in that county are vaccinated. And I want you to compare that to 75% in Orange County. These are health disparities in the making. This is what it looks like when there's a health disparity. Much harder to access vaccination there, much harder to access testing there. It's a far rural county in the northeast of the state, but it just shows you that there's incredible discrepancies and there's a lot of hesitancy. And that has a lot to do with trust in science and accurate communication. And I fear that lessons we should have learned in the HIV/AIDS epidemic, we didn't fully learn about trust in science and about how to reach communities. And so we're back relearning those things. And I know you know that I worked on that exact issue in the HIV epidemic. And here I am, I feel like I'm working on the issue again now with a different pandemic. But the lessons are still there to be learned.
Yeah.
How do we cultivate trust? How do we deal with conveying health information? We've got a wonderful program in health behavior on this campus. And they can help guide us, but there's a lot of work to be done. We have not cultivated the trust. Part of it is health information. We know about science. Science is a changing phenomenon. It doesn't get one answer, but it changes in its answers. And that uncertainty is not comfortable for a lot of folks. People are looking for a simple, clear answer. And when they don't get it, they get suspicious that something else is happening. And so I think we're dealing with the political and social determinants of trust. And I fear that we've got a big job ahead of us. And this is beyond the university. This university has demonstrated powerfully its support of reason and science. And I'm really proud of that. I could go on, and you know it. I don't want to start a class here. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ron.
I do think the only final question Jill had put in the chat is that, and I guess I'm going to generalize it a little bit. When you say people are fully vaccinated, are you using the definition that includes a booster?
No, we know that we don't have a great confidence in the number of boosters that are in our system. We have absolute certainty that 13,082 people here at Carolina have submitted their booster evidence in a card scan. Other than that, we don't know. But I want you to understand that boostering is very variable across the country. The US is 42% boosted, and North Carolina is 47% boosted. So there's a lot of people that haven't gotten boosters. I don't think our measure of 13,082 is accurate at all. A lot of folks just haven't taken the time to submit their boosters to the system, and we're trying all kinds of things. You may have seen the golden ticket, contest to try and make it happen. That's just a way of bringing a little humor to the necessity that we be told when people are boosted, but it'll happen over time. I believe that we'll encourage people to submit their boosters. And any of you that haven't done so and are boosted, it would really be good if you just went. It's very easy. Just go out on our website, look at the COVID resources, click on the booster place, and go ahead and put your booster in. It will help others to realize how important boostering is. Makes a huge difference in, frankly, it makes a huge difference in the sequelae of infection if you get infected.
We'll try and put that link in the chat so that people could do that even as we speak. And if it's okay, I'll move us to our next agenda item. Todd Nicolette, thank you for being with us. There have been a lot of questions, I know, in different places about Project Kitty Hawk that the system is supporting, and in particular, how that intersects with existing efforts at online learning on the campus. What are the advantages of working with Kitty Hawk versus not? So we're very grateful for you being with us today to help us kind of understand this and be able to take this back to different parts of the university, this information. So Todd.
All right, well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me to share what we know about Project Kitty Hawk. Digital and lifelong learning provides strategy, coordination, and service in support of online and flexible learning across campus. And today, as Mimi said, I'm going to provide a brief overview of the system's Project Kitty Hawk initiative. That'll take about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to leave the bulk of the time to make sure that we can ask and answer any questions or have any discussion as you might find most useful. As Mimi mentioned, in the last few months, you may have seen many articles referencing Kitty Hawk in a number of news sources, and it has raised significant interest here and elsewhere. So first, what is Project Kitty Hawk? The UNC system has created an initiative that will create a nonprofit startup company that can help system institutions like UNC Chapel Hill and others put programs online. It receives significant support from the legislature in order to create this affiliated entity that would work with institutions. I'm going to put 2 links in the chat. First is to the official Kitty Hawk page. So that's the resource and an official source of information on the System Office website. The second is to a podcast from the Institute for Emerging Issues that was done in December that covers quite a bit around what Project Kitty Hawk is about, and has Andrew Kelly from the System Office in particular talking at some length and answering questions about the initiative. So I'm going to give you the 5-minute version. At that site, you can get the 30-minute version, if you will. So first, why? Why was this initiative created? As the site says, it's to help universities design workforce-aligned online programs, as well as attract, enroll, and support learners through graduation. It is really driven and closely aligned with North Carolina's educational attainment goal, something actually that was explored in depth also with the Institute for Emerging Issues in their forum earlier this week, which looked at it from a number of different angles. And that educational attainment goal is to have 2 million North Carolinians complete a post-secondary degree or credential by 2030. So it's an ambitious and aspirational goal, and there's a lot of work to do to help make that happen. In order to do that, we really need to reach working adult learners, an underserved population in North Carolina. So that's one of the key drivers. How do we attract that audience? We know that there are more than 60,000 such learners that are enrolled in programs out of state, typically at large online universities. And we really need and want better options for those in North Carolina for those North Carolinians to take education in North Carolina. And this initiative is designed to help UNC system institutions create those options. It's important to note that there are many institutions, ours included, that have some options already, and it's not intended to replace those, but it's really to complement those and create new tools for institutions in order to extend their reach. So what's been done so far? It's really in the early stages. The legislature has appropriated the funding as part of the recently passed budget, and the Board of Governors did officially create this entity and appointed its board of directors. That board includes a number of key people, the system president, but also 3 chancellors from system institutions, UNC Asheville, ECU, UNC Greensboro, 4 business leaders, and one of whom is a Carolina alum, and that's Susan Cates. And she also played a leadership role, an important leadership role in the early years of our remarkably successful MBA at UNC program. That's what we know about what they've done so far. So had a vision and created the beginning of launching that vision and forming what can build it. I know they're working to build out that organization, and they're seeking to identify potential programs that could be early offerings that would benefit from the services that the Kitty Hawk organization provides. The specific services and terms, however, for how Kitty Hawk will work with institutions and what that will look like, that still needs to be determined. So there's a lot of work to do. And that really informs what we know about how Project Kitty Hawk could benefit UNC Chapel Hill and what it really means for us. So the short answer is we don't know exactly what it will mean for us. We do know this is a really exciting opportunity for the state, and we want to support it as any way we can. Since we can't identify specific efforts until we know more about how that organization will work with institutions, there's not a lot more we can say other than think about, well, what might we consider this in the future? So that question that me posed, well, how does this fit in the work that we're doing across campus? So at this point, I would recommend we think about this as really another potential option to help our university develop programs. So we know that we've got digital and lifelong learning already ready to support programs, and we have 2U as a key partner to help us build new programs in addition to supporting those that they're already supporting on campus. What Kitty Hawk represents is really a third potential option. It's another tool in our toolkit that we can consider as we identify the best ways to extend our programs and increase access to learners across the state and beyond. It's really early in the process, but we are excited about the goals and potential for the system, for the institutions across the system, and what it means for North Carolina citizens. And we look forward to exploring how UNC Chapel Hill can best support that statewide effort. So that's what I have for the overview. What questions or comments do you all have?
So if a program or a department or a school is considering an online option that would meet the adult learners that Kitty Hawk is targeting, is there any reason to delay that effort in order to align with Kitty Hawk? Is there some advantage for people for doing that, or for places on our campus for doing that? Or should we simply proceed, given that we have the resources of your office? What I think that's certainly a question in my mind is and I think that's why I asked the question about fit, is how do these things fit together? How should people be thinking about what to take advantage of, or where the best value is for a department or school that is trying to negotiate this?
That's a great question. So the short answer I'd say right now is if there's any unit that is interested in exploring an online option, whether it aligns with what Kitty Hawk is trying to achieve, or is next to it, or is about something else entirely, please reach out to me, reach out to Digital and Lifelong Learning, and we can help navigate what those options are and how quickly we can help you achieve your goals, and whether or not that's a good fit for what Kitty Hawk brings. That might actually help us figure out how best to leverage the opportunity that Kitty Hawk presents. And it may be as well a way to get at Vaughn's question in the chat. So one of the best ways to have a voice in this is to talk with us in Digital and Lifelong Learning And we can help make sure that those interests are represented as we think about, well, what's the strategy for UNC Chapel Hill. Work with the Provost office and the Chancellor's office to make sure that strategy aligns with everything that we're trying to do across campus and is supplementary and complementary of those efforts. And then we can think about how we can explore the different opportunities that Kitty Hawk and others might represent. It might also help us find some new opportunities that we want to explore that we hadn't considered, and regardless of whether Kitty Hawk is the best way to help achieve that.
Todd, can I add something to that?
Please.
Yeah, I'll just add a piece maybe about money. So often there's an upfront cost, and as you may know, the state is making a large investment in Kitty Hawk. We don't know what the operational model will look like, but if it's like 2U, there is an upfront payment to help with the development costs. So I have very little money in my office to spend on developing new programs, and we have to be judicious in what we do. So what I'm hoping is this will offer us a way to help fund the front end costs. So in a way, that answer your question depends on, do you need any front end cost, right? Sometimes you can do something that's really economical. So there will be a kind of money template on this because we don't yet have the whole financial model mapped out, and nor can we, because we don't know what Kitty Hawk is going to have on offer. So I don't think it should stop anybody from doing something that's important to do. But we may reserve the right, as we know more, to go at the rate that helps financially.
Right, exactly. No, I think that's part of the question, or that was implicit in my question, but you clarified it. Thank you.
I think we'll have to know more to be able to map that.
Okay, there are a couple of things in the chat. Todd, have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes, I can start with those, and I want to build off of what Chris was just saying. And if you don't know how it fits in the financial model or what your financial model might look like, please reach out because we can help answer that question. It may be that you learn that there isn't a financial model that can help move that goal forward, at least not at this point in time. But then, we might find that solution that doesn't need investment, or it might get you in line for having that investment, being one of those early programs. We have from Leisha the question of how this effort jibes with existing online programs with private sector vendors like 2U, clearly demonstrating her experience and knowledge working with one of those. So 2U is the partner that we're working with. Private companies like this are often called online program managers, or OPMs. And if you look at a lot of the press around Kitty Hawk, it's often referenced as going to be a nonprofit OPM. So it's going to be intended to be a nonprofit version of what those companies are. Companies like 2U or Coursera or Academic Partnerships or Pearson or Wiley, there are a whole array of companies that provide that kind of service. The intent is that it would provide a similar quality of service and give a possibility for a business model that might work well with institutions. And that's part of what we'll be looking at, is seeing, well, what are the quality of services? What have they been able to build? How can that help us accelerate our degrees and the quality that we see fitting what we're trying to achieve? And then what do those financial terms look like? The intent is that it's competitive with those. And I hope they're able to achieve that, and we'll provide any guidance and support we can to help them achieve that. And then if we've then we'll find out what happens, right? I think that's the test, and it's an exciting thing to help them navigate.
So Todd, I'll actually add something there too.
Yeah.
Just so people know the top level principles. I've met with 2U, and what I've said to 2U is we're not backing off our relationship. We have a long-standing relationship. We're opening a new relationship with something that's new. And I've talked to the system office, and I've said we want to be first movers in this. And so we can do both, and then we have more flexibility to decide what we think is best for us within the limits of the contracts and the rules that will follow both sides. So I'm confident it's actually great for us to have these two options. We know what one of them looks like. We'll know more about the second, and it'll give us a kind of diversity of approach that'll be very helpful.
But in fact, there's a third option, if I understand it. Is that not correct, Todd, that your office can help with things separately from 2U, right?
So yes, I mean, we're a coordinating presence no matter how it gets done. We can help figure out the best way to achieve your program's goals and implement those. There may be instances where a third-party provider working through an OPM isn't adding enough value, and we've got the means to build it on our own, build it and support it on our own, with all the caveats that Chris already mentioned in terms of.
So maybe that's a no OPM option, and we've always had that, and I think we'll keep it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Thanks. And then Vaughn, you had a question in the chat asking, how will the degrees be funded? Will we be seeking students from out of state, or it sounds like maybe we don't know the answers to those questions?
We do know some about what the intent is in terms of what the funding model is for these programs. At least at this moment in time, the expectation that the system office has indicated is that a program supported by Kitty Hawk would be considered what we call off the model. That doesn't dictate what the tuition should be or needs to be. What it means is it's not going to be part of the traditional campus-based tuition model with allocation. We still have the ability then to set what that rate is, have differential rates, and it still has approval processes in terms of how that happens and what that looks like and how those models work. One of the benefits of being off the models, it makes it easier to have to do the sharing of tuition, which is part of the model with Kitty Hawk and with our relationship with 2U as well, and most OPMs.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions at the moment, I think we should go to our next agenda item. Todd, we may ask you to come back as this develops and keep us posted. But I do think your overarching message of if your department or school wants to get into this business, Todd should be your first stop for consultation. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Amy, are you with us?
I am indeed. All right, so I have a PowerPoint presentation with just a few short slides. Let me pull that up and see if I can get it rocking and rolling for us. All right. Can everyone see that slide on your screens? Perfect. Love it when a plan comes together. All right, so I was asked to offer a brief update regarding an overview of the summit and what we have been busy doing since. And so I'm pleased that I think we have a number of good items to report, but we will start with the summit overview, which, as you may remember, was a program, a full day program that my colleague Samantha Meltzer-Brody and I, she is the department chair of psychiatry, hosted in partnership with a whole number of folks across campus. And we were very pleased with the turnout on that day. We had approximately 835 attendees there. As you can see, the vast majority of those were staff, but we did have representation from our students and our faculty as well. And in particular, one of the things that I think we appreciated the most is that we had participation as panelists and contributors and facilitators from all walks of our faculty and staff. And a special thanks to those folks, again, who participated and helped play such an important role in pulling together a really robust set of conversations. You may recall that we talked about three key themes, which were laid out for us by the Chancellor. That's prevention, crisis services, and also our campus culture. And we are continuing to support faculty and staff in campus-wide dialogue, as we are with students, about mental health and well-being. And this will be an ongoing conversation. One of the things that was an important message for us to convey that day is, although it was a big day and certainly a lot of great conversation, it was just one day, and it wasn't an opportunity to continue the dialogue, particularly to take a deeper dive into some of the intersections of other key areas with mental health that we knew needed to happen. So more to come, a little teaser there for what we're going to be doing this spring to extend the conversation. In terms of what we heard from faculty and staff, I thought we'd just cover some sort of brief highlights. The first of which is an important caveat that with more than 700 faculty and staff, as you would expect, there was no sort of common voice necessarily. That the needs and the concerns and the feedback regarding things that we were doing well and things that we aren't doing so well, quite diverse. And again, we need to continue to talk about that and continue to keep our finger on the pulse and assess. But there were a number of messages that sort of were pervasive across the day, which I don't think will surprise anyone here, and I won't necessarily go through them all in order, but that certainly everyone is feeling stress and burnout and the effects of mental health. And again, I think if that is one sort of silver lining in all of this that I've spent some time talking about, particularly as I've shared with media what we've been doing over the last couple of days, is that I hope it's positive that we are having conversations about mental health in ways that we never have before. We are recognizing that it affects all of us. As Samantha Meltzer-Brody often says, if you have not been affected, your mental health has not been affected by the pandemic and all the related issues over the last several years, you're not paying attention. And so we recognize that that is something we're all dealing with, and hopefully sort of reinforces that we all have a role to play in it. Salary increases and the fact that salary levels had been stagnant for so long had been another point of sort of intersection with everyone's mental health. And fortunately, since November, we've had some traction there. So I take that as a good sign. Folks are generally supportive of the idea of mental health days and flex work. And certainly now that we're moving forward with not just pilots on our flex work approach, but long-term solutions, I think that too is a sign of some real traction. There was some confusion about roles and where do I know where my job starts and stops and where somebody else's picks up. So what is, as a faculty member, my responsibility to support a student in terms of his or her mental health? Where does academic advising perhaps need to pick up and take the ball and run with it? When and how do I reach out to the dean of students? How could I report a student, for example, about whom I'm concerned? So that kind of thing was a common message. And then generally just the need for clear communication about what resources we offer on campus, what guidance we have for individuals regarding how they can help others, and resources in particular for students. How can we make sure that we're doing the very best job that we can for referring our students? And I would just want to reinforce that, while from the student affairs vantage point, we're being a leading voice in all of this, I recognize that our role is really to oversee the out-of-class student learning and development experience. And so in terms of providing faculty and staff resources, we need to rely on our colleagues in HR. And that said, we recognize the important partnership and the need to support one another in this work. And so we really hope that that's the role that we're sort of carving out here. But this is not by any means an attempt to put student affairs between you and the HR department or others in terms of advocating for your needs, simply an opportunity to share with you what we heard. So with that, last slide, what have we been doing? And I'm pleased to say that it's a lot. And so we'll spend the bulk of our time here today, and I'll close in particular with what we've just launched this week, which we're really enthused about. So a couple of key things, and some of this may be familiar to those of you who have been working with us closely. Just at the very end of October, and so basically effective November 1st, we signed a contract with a telehealth services provider. One of the key themes that we heard from students, and this was a big message from them, particularly in the mental health summit conversations, was the need for accessible anywhere telehealth counseling. They want something that both goes beyond the hours of 8 to 5, and they don't necessarily want to have to leave their home or to go into CAPS or some other location to access those services. So we have signed a contract with a national expert in providing telehealth support to colleges and universities. They're a preferred provider for NASPA, which is our National Student Affairs Association. So we've signed on with UWill, and you may remember that for a period of a couple of weeks in October, we had, for the first time in 15 years, needed to implement a short wait list. The wait for students was on the order of about a week to a week and a half or so. And it's really important to remember that that wait was only for a particular type of service. We were still doing emergent and urgent care, walk-ins. We were doing intake still and offering those all same day. But if you had a need for some sort of ongoing brief therapy, that was what you needed to wait about a week to a week and a half for an appointment for. But with implementing the You Will contract, we were immediately able to exhaust that wait list, and we have not had one since. So we're very happy about that. Seems to be a popular resource with students. We have signed a one-year contract with You Will just to treat it as a pilot. If for whatever reason we don't like that particular service, there are a number of others out there in the market with which we can develop a relationship. But so far, so good, and we'll keep you posted on that. We have also signed on, as you may know, with the JED Foundation. The JED Foundation is a national foundation that focuses in on the prevention, intervention, and postvention of suicide among both K through 12 and higher education students. And you sign on with JED as a JED campus for a 4-year term. During that period of time, you have access to consulting. They assist you in terms of doing a university assessment and looking at your policies and practices regarding suicide and related issues, including alcohol and mental health. And we also have access to a terrific assessment tool called the Healthy Mind Survey. So we'll not only have another resource to get a finger on the pulse of our students here at Carolina, but the ability to benchmark across colleges and universities across the country. So that'll be a terrific resource. We've just signed on with them this month. As a matter of fact, we had our first meeting with our campus advisor yesterday. And so more to follow on that. We'll be doing an assessment in year 1 and year 4. So that will be a particular first step that we'll be engaging in starting this month. We have also, to extend the conversation, as I sort of alluded earlier, we had committed to, at the end of the summit, having a series of monthly mental health seminars in which we would take the opportunity to do a slightly deeper dive into some key issues of interest to our community, in particular, things that intersected with mental health that are important topics for us. So one of those topics, and you'll see here, is going to be the subject of our first seminar, which we have tentatively slated for February 28th. We're checking to make sure we're not stepping on any other important events that day. But our first seminar is going to be on mental health, faith, and spirituality. Other topics that have come up for which we're still sort of working in scheduling will be the intersection of mental health and gender-based violence, the intersection of mental health and at-risk communities, the intersection of mental health and our communities of color. So more to come on that, but we anticipate doing monthly seminars through the end of the year. And then we're going to cap off the year with our mental health colloquium. It's going to be a little bit shorter than what we did at the summit. We anticipate about a half day or so, but we're going to come back to those three key themes that we talked about in the summit: the crisis, the prevention, and the culture, campus culture, and say, how well did we do? What do we think we need to augment? What holes do we still see? And in particular, lay out a framework for then the coming academic year. This will be a constant process of implementation, testing and evaluation, and then potentially adding or changing some of the things that we're offering. So that's going to be scheduled tentatively for May of this year. And then the last thing, and this is the big news this week, and I hope some of you have seen it either in your inbox or perhaps on the news, because we had several news stories about this year. We have launched our Heals Care Network. This was the thing that we had said was going to be our big initiative and our public's presentation of fostering and extending this campus-wide culture of compassion and care that we want here at Carolina. So it is both a philosophy and an approach and an initiative, and it also has a website attached. And I'm going to click on that now so that you can see it. Again, one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about at the summit was that the mental health pandemic is global in nature. This is not a Carolina problem. It is certainly not a regional problem. We are dealing with this across the globe, and it took us a number of years to get here, and it's going to take all of us really as a community to be able to address this need. So we have created this Heals Care Network website with some hopefully really useful tools in an easy to access and visible fashion. We've got links to 24/7. I'm just going to scan over some of it so that you can see what the cards do here when you roll over them. You can also click on them.
You're not seeing it. I don't think we're
you're
seeing
not?
it.
Oh,
No.
that's interesting. Okay, hang on just a second. Maybe I need to stop sharing and share that page very intentionally. Hang on just a second. Let me try again. Okay.
We have plenty of time, so take your time. This is great information.
All right. Is it up now?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So my apologies for that.
No problem.
Here's the Heals Care Network website. And I'm just sort of, as I said, I was scrolling over the cards so that you can sort of see how the technology works. We really wanted this to be a highly visible, functional site. And in particular, one of the things that's so critical about this, especially to be a useful student tool, is David Levere in IT has been our hero, our programming behind the scenes extraordinaire, so that this platform translates very well if you're on a phone too, as many do not. So you get a sense of this, and I'll just talk through some of the resources and then show you a couple of things. We have links to 24/7 support here on the site. We have a comprehensive searchable and filterable database, and that's right here so that you can go into it, of mental health resources. If you click on this particular hub, one of the things that you can do is go in and identify some particular interests, indicate who you are, and what your particular relationship to the university might be, so that we can tailor some things to you. It is designed to synthesize that all in one place and ultimately help you find the resource that might be the best fit for you. We've got suicide prevention resources here on this page. We have links to trainings, including our mental health first aid training, which we have extended thanks to Social Works Partnership. We also have links to an anonymous care referral form. You may know that on our Dean of Students website before, we had a care referral form, but it was not anonymous. And it was one of the pieces that folks told us over the course of the last several months that might be helpful. So you can now submit an anonymous care referral for a colleague or a student, and we will follow up with that individual. And then one of our favorite things is down here in the corner, there is a live chat button. And this is a feature that is staffed by our trained student peer supporters. It's the acronym is LSN, which we're saying listen, and it stands for listen, support, and navigate. And the Peers for Progress folks actually staff this particular live chat. That's our group out of our Gilling School for Public Health. And it's intended primarily to support students, but it is a resource that is available to everyone in the community. We just know that students in particular tend to really appreciate a chat feature and to be able to talk with one of their peers about some resources that might be available to them. I'll also just very briefly call your attention to this menu that's up here in the left, in which you can see that there is a traditional drop-down menu for which you can access resources. There's also a find support feature here. I'm concerned about myself. What do I do? I'm concerned about a student. What should I do? And then again, you'll see just in a slightly different presentation ways that you can access the tools, get involved, find out more, and a critical feedback and questions piece there. So again, one of our concerns and our overarching sort of goal here is that we recognize that sometimes asking for help can be difficult, but we certainly didn't want accessing that help to be difficult. So this is designed to bring together all of these resources to make a centralized tool for us that not only hopefully makes it much easier to access help for yourself, but also allows every member of our community to play a role in supporting our collective mental health. So with that, let me stop sharing, or well, maybe I'll just leave that up in case there are questions about this. And certainly glad to answer any questions or take feedback.
Well, Amy, first of all, this must have been just an unbelievable amount of work, between where we were in November at the time of the Mental Health Summit and now. So first of all, thank you and congratulations. I think this is just an amazing step forward for our campus. And I know you have led this work, and there are lots of people that have helped you along the way, I'm sure. And I wish I knew all of them to thank, but I don't at the moment. So I'm going to thank you on both for your leadership and then also for, if you'll convey our thanks to all the people that that we don't. I think that's, really just a huge step forward. So thank you. I think there are lots of affirmations also in the chat. And then Allison Scholenbaum, it looks like perhaps has a question. And Allison, I think I got your last name mispronounced. So apologies for that. Allison, do you want to just unmute and say your question? Okay, if not, she says that one of the biggest issues she runs into is supporting students is their lack of comfort finding off-campus support. So she's asking if the site addresses private provider networks or provides that guidance.
We don't
I'm
have.
sorry that I was double muted.
No problem. But I think we just posed the question, so.
So thanks for the question, Allison. So if indeed the question about off-campus support means particularly clinicians, so mental health counselors, we don't have a listing right here on the website. And some of the reason for that is intentional. One of the things that we encourage students to do is to connect with CAPS, to at least do an intake and make an assessment about what their needs might be so that we might help them do that. We offer through CAPS a referral resource, and we do that very intentionally to hopefully get them connected to somebody who might be just the right fit. But I take the feedback that sometimes students might want to be a little bit more autonomous, and so maybe referring people outside the community would be helpful. We typically, one of the things that you run into when you have a site like this, once you start referring or making recommendations beyond the university, is that can sort of take over. And one of our big fears and overarching goals here has been even recognizing that even what we offer on campus is a lot. And so doing that in a way that makes a website that is easily accessible, that's comprehensible, and that doesn't feel so intimidating. I mean, how many of us have been to a website in which you just sort of give up because you say there's so much here and I have no idea how to access anything. So it's really important to us that it remains that way. So I think that will be a priority, but I appreciate the note and the feedback, and we'll definitely keep that in the back of our minds as we add elements here.
Thank you so much. And I had one more question about content.
Sure.
I know there's a resilience coaches network here, but I didn't see the link on the site, I don't think. I was looking for it because I had a student I thought would be a good fit for that program. And so I was just wondering if there was a reason those are separate or if I missed a memo. I'm sorry.
No, to my knowledge, and this is one of the things we're asking people for, particularly in that feedback. So if you see something that we're doing on campus that isn't up here, it's I'm 90% comfortable saying not intentional. So I will take a note about the resilience coaches because I'm aware of that resource too. I wasn't aware that it wasn't up here, and I'll double check and see if we can add that. I appreciate it.
Thank you for this amazing, amazing project.
Oh, thank you all. It's really, Mimi was right when she said it is a team and campus-wide effort. So I'm standing up here talking to you about it, but this is hundreds of people who have been involved in this, and to everyone, thank you.
All right. Are there other questions? I see more affirmations in the chat. Let's see. Okay. All right. So this is from Hillary, who is having connectivity issues. She says she understands the need to protect student privacy or to protect privacy around student deaths. But she is encountering students who are struggling with a disconnect with friends and the Carolina community when they are struggling with a death in their dorm, of which the rest of the campus is unaware. Is there a way that some campus communication could go out that could acknowledge the situation in a way that affirms the students who are struggling with the issue without compromising the privacy of families? And she acknowledges that there may not be, or it's too tiny a needle to thread. But she poses.
I appreciate the question, Hillary, and you're right. It is part of the sort of challenge and conundrum with this. One of the things that we know from working with students is when you open up that circle wider, you are advising folks, many of whom have no interaction with this particular student, and that message as a result and hearing about it in that way can be very jarring. And that's the reason why we don't send it in that way, because it again is triggering often for those students who have no connection and now just read that there has been a student death on campus. So I appreciate the concern. I will say one of the things that we're trying to do is, rather than send out sort of a general campus message, is to get word out through discrete networks, and that has been our focus. And you're right, this is a tough one, and it is one in which there is some, risk and concern either way you go. We have made the decision to make sure that we are not hopefully presenting in a sort of campus-wide general message, a general acknowledgement of the student death, again, to individuals who have had no contact and likely won't have contact and will find that message really triggering.
Yeah, I want everyone to know that Amy and I have begun a practice of getting together once a month just to have some conversation around this and other student affairs issues, which has been really valuable to me. So, you know, I think there are lots of ways in which we can kind of keep revisiting these issues and see if we get to new ideas and new solutions. So I think that at this point, we need to move to our last agenda item, or our last two agenda items. And I'm wondering, maybe Amy, could you stop your screen share?
Absolutely, I can do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Jill, do we want to go to Ricardo? I see your hand up. I wonder if you could put your question in the chat, just because we're really getting low on time. Thank you. Jill and Helena, do we want to sort of do these things concurrently? We want to ask you all to participate in a poll about your comfort level of coming back in March in a hybrid fashion, and recognizing that that's, as of today, what your comfort level is. If, as Ron said, this BA2 subvariant dictates that this not even be a question, we'll go obviously with that. But imagining that things stay as they are today, would you, what would your comfort level be? So I think Helena, maybe we'll go ahead and launch that poll, and then perhaps Jill can take us through our reports, our committee reports.
No. Okay. So the poll is open, and it looks like everyone is understanding what's there. So we do have a little bit of business that we need to attend to today, and accepting the reports from some of our faculty governance committees. There are 4 reports that were submitted this month. They were provided in advance for you to look at. Our plan for today is to accept the reports by title, which means the chairs have not been asked to make a formal presentation, but they are present to take any questions that you may have. So if there are any questions for any of the committee chairs presenting reports today, please prepare those. And I think Helena is going to be closing the poll in just a minute, but Allison, I saw your hand, so would you like to go ahead with your question?
Sure. When I was looking through the admissions report, I noticed a piece on race-neutral admissions, and given our conversation about admissions currently going forward the way they are, I was just wondering if we could learn a little bit more about the race-neutral admissions committee.
Okay, so is Professor Panter here to?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Hi. Hi, everyone. I chair that committee, and I'm happy to give an update at some point if you'd like to a broader group. We give numerous updates to the committee, that the undergraduate admissions committee, and to other groups during the year. But in general, we ask the question. We're mandated to keep looking and to try to understand if there were any other options than using race and ethnicity as an item as part of the admissions. It's one of many factors, and we're asked to see, are there ways are there other options that would be permissible? And so we look high and low. We have a committee, you'll see that committee, but it draws from all around the campus, including biostatisticians and quantitative people and qualitative people, and just really trying to dig in and have an open mind and to try to figure out if there is an alternative, because we're obligated to keep looking and look at with an open mind, and that's what we do when we work all the time. So we have multiple. Just briefly, I would just say we have multiple projects going on, including we look at the essays, the college essays. Is there something there that we can look at? We're running studies. We do simulations. A lot of kind of work that's very interesting. And if you're interested in the work, you could also be a part of the group too, because we could use the expertise. It's the excellent part of this is being at a university like ours to answer a question like this.
Thank you so much for that information, and I'm going to look more into your work. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. And Helena, do we?
And
Oh,
now,
I'm sorry.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I want to finish accepting the reports. Do we have any further questions on any of these reports for the committee chairs? Okay, so our plan, I propose that we accept them by unanimous consent, which doesn't require a motion or a vote. So if we proceed by that route, you will be voted as having voted in favor. I mean, it will be recorded as having voted in favor of accepting all the reports. If there's an objection, then we can have a motion and a vote. Is there any objection to accepting these reports by unanimous consent? Hearing none. Okay, the reports are accepted by unanimous consent. And now, Mimi, we can look at the poll.
Wonderful. Helena, can you provide us with the poll results? Yep. I would have put money on that. We would have half going in one direction and half going in another, but we will just keep our eye on things, and we'll have to make a decision about that as an Office of Faculty Governance. But we'll give you our reasoning for doing so as the time approaches. So thank you all for being here. And I think, I'm assuming we can adjourn by unanimous consent, Jill? Okay. All right. Then hearing no objections, we will adjourn by unanimous consent, and we'll see you in March, and be in touch. Just reach out if there's